The club's pulse thrummed through Ava's veins, louder than her own heartbeat, as she stood at the bar, clutching a whiskey she hadn't touched. She'd come here to escape the weight of her family's expectations, the suffocating silence of her apartment, the ghost of a life she hadn't chosen. But then across the room she saw her and everything changed. Ava Carter, 28, wasn't supposed to be here. She was the dutiful daughter, the one who followed rules, who worked 60-hour weeks as a graphic designer in Manhattan to prove she could make it without her parents' money. Her life was a carefully constructed facade. Perfect job, perfect apartment, perfect smile to hide the ache inside. She told herself tonight would be simply quiet drink at the Velvet Room, a trendy lesbian bar in Greenwich Village, to clear her head after another argument with her mother about settling down. But the moment her eyes landed on the woman leaning against the far wall, Ava's world tilted. The stranger was magnetic. She had short, tousled blonde hair that caught the neon glow of the club, and her leather jacket clung to her frame like it was made for her. She was maybe 30, with a confidence that made Ava's stomach flip. Their eyes met and Ava swore the air thickened, the chatter and clinking glasses fading into a hum. She looked away, cheeks burning, but the stranger's gaze lingered like a touch. Ava adjusted her black dress, suddenly hyper-aware of the fabric against her skin, and then, to her horror, she felt it. A faint snap. Her underwear, the lacy pair she'd thrown on without thinking, had betrayed her, slipping down her thigh under the tight dress. She froze, mortified, praying no one noticed. She glanced up. The stranger was still watching, a playful smirk curling her lips. Ava's heart raced. She didn't know whether to laugh or bolt. Instead, she took a shaky sip of her whiskey, pretending she hadn't just been undone by her own wardrobe malfunction. The stranger pushed off the wall and started toward her, weaving through the crowd with a grace that made Ava's breath catch. She was tall, her blue eyes sharp and warm, like a summer sky after a storm. Ava straightened, clutching the bar for support, as the woman stopped just close enough for Ava to catch the faint scent of cedar and citrus. "Rough night?" the woman asked, her voice low and teasing, with a slight southern drawl that felt out of place in the city. Ava laughed, more out of nerves than humor. "You could say that." She shifted, praying her dress would hold everything in place. "I just needed a drink." "Looks like you need more than that," the woman said, her eyes glinting with mischief. "I'm Riley." "Ava," she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. Riley's presence was disarming, like she could see through Ava's polished exterior to the chaos underneath. They talked and Ava found herself unraveling. The words spilling out her job, her family's pressure, the way she felt like she was living someone else's life. Riley listened, her gaze never wavering, and shared her own story. A photographer who'd left a small town in Georgia to chase her dreams in New York, only to find the city could be as lonely as it was vibrant. As the night deepened, the club seemed to shrink around them. They moved to a quieter corner, their knees brushing under the table. Ava forgot about her wardrobe mishap, forgot about the world outside. Riley's laugh was infectious, her stories painted with color and grit. She talked about capturing moments, sunsets, strangers, the raw beauty of life, and Ava felt something stir inside her, something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. But then a shout cut through the music. A man, drunk and belligerent, was arguing with a bartender near the entrance. The mood in the club shifted, tension rippling through the crowd. Riley's hand grazed Ava's, a fleeting touch that sent a jolt through her. "Stay here," Riley said, her voice calm but firm, as she stood to assess the situation. Ava's heart pounded, not just from the commotion but from the sudden absence of Riley's warmth. She watched as Riley approached the bartender, her posture confident but non-threatening, trying to defuse the situation. The man's voice grew louder, his words slurring with venom. "This place shouldn't even exist," he spat, gesturing wildly at the rainbow flags adorning the walls. Ava's stomach twisted. She'd heard that kind of hatred before, whispered by her parents, shouted by strangers. She wanted to shrink, to disappear, but Riley didn't flinch. She said something to the man, too quiet for Ava to hear, and for a moment it seemed to work. He backed off, muttering, and the crowd exhaled. But then he lunged, shoving Riley hard enough to make her stumble. Ava was on her feet before she could think, her heart in her throat. "Hey!" she shouted, her voice cutting through the noise. She didn't know what she was doing, only that she couldn't let Riley face this alone. The man turned, his eyes narrowing, but security was already moving in, dragging him toward the door. Riley caught Ava's gaze, her expression a mix of gratitude and something deeper, something unspoken. "You didn't have to do that," Riley said later, as they stood outside the club, the city's hum surrounding them. The cool night air felt like a balm against Ava's flushed skin. "I wanted to," Ava admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. She felt exposed, raw, but alive in a way she hadn't in years. Riley stepped closer, her hand brushing Ava's arm, and for a moment, Ava thought she might kiss her. But Riley just smiled, soft and knowing, and said, "Let's get you home. Can't have you falling apart on the street." Ava laughed, the tension breaking, but as they walked toward the subway, her mind raced. This night, this woman had cracked something open inside her. She didn't know what came next, but for the first time in a long time, she wanted to find out. The subway rattled beneath Ava's feet, but all she could feel was the ghost of Riley's hand on her arm. They sat close, shoulders brushing, the fluorescent lights casting sharp shadows across Riley's face. Ava stole glances, memorizing the curve of her jaw, the way her eyes crinkled when she smiled. Riley had insisted on riding with Ava to her apartment in Chelsea, claiming it was no trouble despite living in Brooklyn. The gesture felt intimate, protective, and Ava's heart fluttered with a mix of gratitude and something she wasn't ready to name. "You don't have to do this," Ava said, her voice soft against the train's hum. Riley shrugged, her leather jacket creaking. "Maybe I want to." Her tone was light, but her eyes held a quiet intensity that made Ava's breath hitch. They fell into an easy silence, the kind that felt like a conversation in itself. Ava wondered how someone she just met could feel so familiar, like a song she'd forgotten the words to but still knew by heart. When they reached Ava's building, the night air was crisp, the city's skyline glittering like a promise. Ava hesitated at the door, her keys jangling in her hand. "Do you want to come up?" The words slipped out before she could stop them, bold and reckless. Riley's smile was slow, almost shy. "Not tonight," she said, but her voice was warm, not dismissive. "I've got an early shoot tomorrow. But I'll see you again, Ava Carter." She reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind Ava's ear, her fingers lingering just long enough to make Ava's skin tingle. Then she turned, disappearing into the night with a wave. Ava stood there, rooted, her heart pounding. She climbed the stairs to her apartment, replaying every moment, the club, the fight, Riley's touch. Sleep was impossible. She sat at her desk, sketching aimlessly, her pencil tracing the lines of Riley's face from memory. By dawn, her sketchbook was filled with her Riley laughing, Riley's eyes catching the light, Riley standing tall against the drunk in the club. Ava didn't know what this was, but it felt like the start of something she couldn't ignore. The next morning, Ava's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Morning, Whiskey Girl. Coffee this afternoon? Riley." Ava's heart leapt. She typed a quick yes before she could overthink it, her fingers trembling with excitement. They met at a cozy cafe in the West Village, the kind with mismatched chairs and the smell of roasted beans. Riley was already there, her camera bag slung over her shoulder, a black coffee in hand. She looked up as Ava approached, and her smile was like sunlight breaking through clouds. They talked for hours, the conversation flowing effortlessly. Riley showed Ava photos on her camera, gritty street shots, vibrant portraits, moments of life frozen in time. Ava shared her own work, pulling up her graphic design portfolio on her phone. Riley leaned close, her shoulder brushing Ava's, and pointed out details in Ava's designs with genuine admiration. "You've got an eye for beauty," Riley said, and Ava blushed, feeling seen in a way she never had. But the ease of the moment shattered when Ava's phone rang. Her mother's name flashed on the screen, and Ava's stomach sank. She silenced it, but the weight of her family's expectations pressed down on her. Riley noticed, her brow furrowing. "Everything okay?" Ava hesitated, then spilled it all: her parents' relentless push for her to marry a man, their disapproval of her lifestyle, the way they saw her queerness as a phase. Riley listened, her expression softening. "My folks were the same," she said quietly. "Kicked me out at 17 when I came out. I haven't spoken to them in years." Ava's heart ached at the thought of Riley facing that kind of rejection. "How do you deal with it?" she asked. Riley shrugged, but her eyes were heavy. "You build your own family. The one that chooses you. She reached across the table, her hand covering Ava's, and the warmth of her touch grounded Ava in a way she hadn't expected. They sat like that, hands entwined, until the cafe started to empty. Over the next few weeks, Ava and Riley became inseparable. They explored the city together, art galleries, hole-in-the-wall bookstores, rooftops with views that stole their breath. Ava felt herself coming alive, her guarded heart softening with every moment they shared. Riley was bold and unapologetic, but she had a gentleness that made Ava feel safe. One night, as they sat on a bench in Central Park, watching the stars fight through the city's glow, Riley kissed her. It was soft at first, then urgent, like they'd both been holding their breath for too long. Ava melted into it, her fears falling away. But the world wasn't as kind as their bubble. Ava's mother started calling more frequently, leaving voicemails about family dinners and nice young men she wanted Ava to meet. Each message was a reminder of the life Ava was supposed to want, the one she'd spent years trying to fit into. She ignored the calls, but the guilt gnawed at her. Riley noticed Ava's growing tension but didn't push, letting Ava come to her when she was ready. One evening as they walked through Brooklyn, a group of men catcalled them, their words laced with slurs. Riley's jaw tightened, but she kept walking, her hand gripping Ava's tightly. "Ignore them," she murmured, but Ava could see the strain in her eyes. It was a stark reminder of the world's cruelty, and Ava felt a surge of protectiveness. She wanted to shield Riley, to build a world where they could just be. That night at Riley's tiny apartment, Ava finally opened up about her fears losing her family, disappointing everyone, failing to be enough. Riley held her, whispering, "You're enough for me." They fell asleep tangled together, and for the first time, Ava felt like she belonged somewhere. Ava woke to the soft light filtering through Riley's window, the city's hum a distant lullaby. Riley was still asleep, her blonde hair splayed across the pillow, her breathing steady. Ava traced the lines of her face with her eyes, memorizing every detail, and felt a pang of something fierce, love, maybe, though she wasn't ready to say it out loud. Their days together became a rhythm, a dance of stolen moments and quiet confessions. Ava started spending more time at Riley's apartment, her own place feeling cold and empty in comparison. They cooked together, laughed over spilled wine, and made love with a tenderness that left Ava breathless. But the outside world kept creeping in, threatening to unravel their fragile happiness. Ava's mother's calls grew more insistent, and one afternoon, Ava made the mistake of answering. "You're coming to dinner this weekend," her mother said, her tone leaving no room for argument. "We've invited someone for you to meet. A lawyer, very successful." Ava's throat tightened. She mumbled an excuse and hung up, but the conversation lingered like a bruise. She didn't tell Riley, not wanting to burden her, but Riley sensed the shift, her eyes searching Ava's face for answers. Instead of pressing, Riley suggested a night out, a concert at a small venue in Williamsburg, a band Riley loved. Ava agreed, desperate for a distraction. The music was loud, raw, and perfect, and for a few hours Ava forgot her worries. She and Riley danced, their bodies pressed close, the crowd a blur around them. But as they left the venue, a man bumped into Ava, his shoulder hitting hers hard enough to make her stumble. "Watch it, Dyke," he muttered, his voice dripping with contempt. Riley spun around, her eyes blazing. "What did you say?" she demanded, stepping between Ava and the man. Ava grabbed her arm, panic rising. "Riley, let's go," she pleaded, but Riley stood her ground, her fists clenched. The man laughed, taunting her, and for a moment, Ava thought Riley might swing. But the crowd pushed them apart, and Ava pulled Riley away, her heart pounding. In the cab ride back, Riley was quiet, her jaw tight. Ava reached for her hand, but Riley pulled away, staring out the window. "I'm tired of this," Riley said finally, her voice low. "The way people look at us, the things they say. I just want to be with you without the world judging us." Ava's chest ached. "I know," she whispered. "I want that too." But she didn't know how to make it real, how to silence the voices, her family's, the strangers, her own doubts. When they reached Riley's apartment, they sat on the couch, the silence heavy. Riley finally spoke, her voice soft but raw. "I've been through this before, Ava. I've lost people because of who I am. I don't want to lose you too." "You won't," Ava said, her voice fierce. She cupped Riley's face, kissing her deeply. pouring every unspoken promise into it. They made love that night with a desperation that felt like defiance, like they could hold the world at bay with their bodies alone. But the next day, Ava's mother showed up at her apartment unannounced. Ava opened the door, her heart sinking at the sight of her mother's tight smile. "We need to talk," her mother said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. Ava braced herself, knowing what was coming. Her mother launched into a lecture about family duty, about fixing Ava's life, about the lawyer who was perfect for her. Ava tried to stay calm, but her mother's words cut deep, each one a reminder of the love she'd never been allowed to claim. "I'm not interested," Ava said finally, her voice shaking. "I'm happy. I'm with someone." Her mother's face hardened. "This phase of yours needs to end, Ava. You're throwing your life away for some fling." "It's not a fling," Ava snapped, her anger flaring. "I love her." The words slipped out, raw and true, and Ava felt a rush of relief and terror. Her mother stared, speechless, then turned and left without another word. Ava sank onto the couch, trembling, the weight of her confession settling over her. She didn't tell Riley about the confrontation, not yet. Instead, she threw herself into their relationship, trying to drown out the fear. They spent a weekend upstate, renting a cabin by a lake, where the world felt far away. They swam, laughed, and made love under the stars, and Ava thought maybe, just maybe, they could build something unbreakable. But when they returned to the city, reality crashed back in. Ava's mother sent a letter, formal and cold, demanding she attend the family dinner or risk being cut off financially. Ava hadn't relied on their money in years, but the threat still stung, a reminder of how conditional their love was. Riley noticed Ava's growing distance and finally confronted her. "What's going on, Ava? You're here, but you're not." They were in Riley's apartment, the air heavy with unspoken words. Ava broke down, telling Riley about her mother, the dinner, the ultimatum. Riley listened, her face unreadable, then pulled Ava into her arms. "You don't have to face this alone," she said. "But you have to decide what you want." Ava didn't have an answer, not yet. But as she lay in Riley's arms that night, she knew one thing. She wasn't ready to let go. Ava stood outside her parents' Upper East Side brownstone, her heart pounding like a drum. The dinner was tonight, and she'd spent days agonizing over whether to go. Riley had offered to come with her, but Ava couldn't bring herself to drag Riley into the lion's den. Not yet. Inside, the house was as pristine as ever, all polished wood and family portraits that screamed wealth and tradition. Her parents sat at the dining table, along with the lawyer, a man named David with a practiced smile and a handshake too firm. Ava's mother introduced him like he was the answer to every problem Ava had ever had. Ava forced a smile, her stomach churning, and took her seat. The conversation was stiff, her parents steering it toward David's accomplishments, his Ivy League degree, his bright future. Ava nodded along, her mind elsewhere in Riley's laugh, her touch, the way she made Ava feel alive. Halfway through dinner, her mother's questions turned pointed. "Ava, when are you going to settle down? David is exactly the kind of man you need." Ava's fork froze midair. She glanced at David, who looked uncomfortable but didn't speak. The room felt suffocating, the weight of her mother's expectations pressing down on her. "I'm not interested in David," Ava said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "I'm with someone. Her name is Riley." The silence was deafening. Her mother's face paled, her father's jaw tightened, and David shifted awkwardly in his seat. "This isn't the time, Ava," her mother said, her voice sharp. "We're trying to help you." "Help me?" Ava's voice rose, years of frustration boiling over. "You've never listened to me. You've never cared about what I want. I love Riley, and I'm not going to hide that anymore." Her father stood, his face red. "If you choose this path, you're choosing to be alone. We won't support this." Ava's throat tightened, but she stood too, her chair scraping against the floor. "Then I'll be alone," she said, the words cutting through her. She walked out, her heart racing, the city's lights blurring through tears as she hailed a cab to Riley's apartment. Riley was waiting, her face lighting up when she saw Ava, then falling as she noticed the tears. Ava collapsed into her arms, sobbing as she recounted the dinner. Riley held her tightly, whispering, "You're not alone. You've got me." They stayed like that for hours, the world outside fading away. Ava felt raw but free, like she finally shed a skin that never fit. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Ava moved in with Riley, her apartment becoming their shared sanctuary. They built a life together, cooking breakfast, arguing over whose turn it was to do the dishes, stealing kisses in the middle of the day. But the world wasn't done testing them. Ava's parents cut her off completely, and though she'd expected it, the loss stung. She threw herself into her work, taking on freelance projects to make ends meet, while Riley's photography gigs kept them afloat. One night, as they walked home from a gallery opening, a group of men followed them, their taunts echoing in the empty street. Riley's hand tightened around Ava's, her body tense, but Ava stepped forward this time, her voice steady. "Leave us alone," she said, her eyes locked on the leader. To her surprise, they backed off, muttering as they disappeared into the night. Riley looked at Ava, her eyes wide with pride. "You're fearless," she said, pulling Ava into a kiss. But fear still lingered. Ava worried about their future money, safety, the weight of a world that didn't always accept them. Riley sensed it, and one evening she sat Ava down, her expression serious. "I want to build a life with you," Riley said. "Not just here, not just now. Forever." She pulled out a small velvet box, revealing a simple silver ring. Ava's breath caught, tears spilling over as she nodded, unable to speak. They kissed, the ring sliding onto Ava's finger, a promise etched in metal. The proposal gave Ava a new kind of strength, but it didn't erase the challenges. Her parents' rejection left a void, and the city's hostility was a constant reminder of the world they lived in. Ava started volunteering at an LGBTQ community center, channeling her pain into helping others. Riley joined her, photographing the center's events, capturing stories of resilience and love. Together they found a community, a chosen family that filled the gaps left by blood. But one night as they walked home from the center, a car slowed beside them. A man leaned out, shouting slurs, and before they could react, he threw a bottle. It shattered at their feet, glass spraying across the sidewalk. Ava froze, her heart pounding, but Riley pulled her into a run, their hands locked together. They didn't stop until they reached their apartment, breathless and shaken. "We can't keep doing this," Ava said, her voice trembling. "Running. Hiding." Riley's eyes were fierce. "Then we fight. Not with fists but with our lives. We live loudly, love fiercely, and show them we're not going anywhere." Ava nodded, her resolve hardening. They weren't just surviving anymore, they were building something unbreakable. Ava and Riley stood side by side at the community center's annual Pride event, the room alive with color and laughter. Ava's ring caught the light as she handed out flyers, her smile brighter than it had been in months. Riley was nearby, her camera clicking, capturing the joy of the moment, drag queens twirling, couples dancing, kids painting rainbows on each other's faces. This was their world now, one they'd fought to carve out. The past year had been a crucible. After the bottle incident, Ava and Riley had doubled down on their work at the center, organizing events, advocating for change, and supporting others who faced the same hatred they did. Ava's parents hadn't reached out, and though the silence hurt, she'd found peace in her chosen family. Riley's photos had gained attention, landing her a solo exhibition, and Ava's design work was thriving, her art infused with a new sense of purpose. But the memory of that night in the street lingered, a reminder of how fragile their safety was. Ava had started taking self-defense classes, and Riley joined her, their shared determination a quiet rebellion against fear. They moved to a new apartment, one with a view of the Hudson, a fresh start filled with their laughter and love. Ava framed Riley's photos on the walls and Riley hung Ava's sketches beside them, their lives intertwined in every detail. One evening as they sat on their balcony, the city sprawling below, Ava turned to Riley. "Do you ever think about leaving? Starting over somewhere else?" Riley took her hand, her thumb brushing over the ring. "Sometimes. But this is our home. We've built something here, and I'm not letting anyone take that away." Her voice was steady, but her eyes held a vulnerability that made Ava's heart ache. They kissed, the city's lights blurring into a constellation of their own making. The Pride event was their biggest yet, a celebration of resilience and love. Ava took the stage to speak, her voice trembling at first but growing stronger. She shared their story, the club, the fights, the ring, the community that held them up. The crowd cheered and Riley's camera flashed, capturing Ava's strength. When Ava stepped down, Riley pulled her into a hug, whispering, "I'm so proud of you." But the night wasn't without its shadows. A small group of protesters gathered outside, their signs filled with hate. Ava's stomach twisted, but she and Riley faced them together, hand in hand, surrounded by their community. The protesters' voices were drowned out by the crowd's chants of love and unity, and for the first time, Ava felt untouchable. They weren't just fighting for themselves anymore, they were fighting for everyone who'd ever been told their love was wrong. Months later, Ava and Riley stood in a small courthouse, their hands clasped as they exchanged vows. The room was filled with friends from the center, their chosen family, their faces beaming with pride. Ava wore a simple white dress, Riley in a tailored suit, her blonde hair slicked back. They promised to love fiercely, to stand together against whatever came. And when they kissed, the room erupted in cheers. As they danced at their reception, Ava rested her head on Riley's shoulder, the music a soft hum around them. "I came to that club for a quiet drink," Ava murmured, a smile tugging at her lips. "And I found you." Riley laughed, her eyes bright. Best wardrobe malfunction ever. Their life wasn't perfect. The world still had its sharp edges, and there were days when the weight of it felt heavy. But they faced it together, their love a beacon in the dark. Ava's sketches now hung in galleries, Riley's photos told stories of hope, and their home was a sanctuary for anyone who needed it. They'd built something bigger than themselves, a legacy of love and resilience. The story that began with a snap strap in a crowded club had become a testament to what it meant to live authentically. Ava and Riley weren't just surviving, they were thriving. Their love a quiet revolution against a world that tried to dim their light. And as they stood together hand in hand, they knew they'd face whatever came next, not just for themselves, but for everyone who dared to love boldly. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe to get notifications about next videos.